a sports presenter, a spokesperson for the Green Party, and now is on something of a mission. He's written another book, And the Truth Shall Set You Free. The most explosive book of the 20th century, it's suggested. He has a theory on the planet and how possibly we could save ourselves. If you'd like to ask him a question directly, feel free. 0345 1053 89. And if you've just tuned in, we did touch upon those amazing scenes when David held that press conference and much was spoken about the colour purple and the rest of it.
Yeah. And
the realization that you came to over a period of 2 months. Now, it strikes me that colleagues of yours, family, friends, those who knew you for a great many years, they must have been horrified at this. It's a huge change, isn't it, in a very short period of time?
Yeah, I guess it was a bit of a shock to a lot of people. It was a bit of a shock to me, to be honest. But interestingly, you know, I travel the country constantly talking, and I get 2,000 or 3,000 letters a year. And that same process of the program self breaking down, the real self coming through, is so many people are going through it now. And that's very positive. It's very good. I'm very optimistic about the future because this is happening. We're starting to de-link from the herd mentality and start to express our uniqueness more and more, which is great because without the herd mentality, a few people can't control the world. It's simple as that. And it was difficult at the time. To be honest, I don't think I've really spoken to any of my former colleagues at the BBC since that time, because I've never really been there and seen them. But I'm sure they thought Icke had gone off his flipping rocker and all that stuff. But what's kind of interesting is that when people hear me speak or they read my books, they get a very different impression of me to the one they've taken on. Indeed, you know, back in that time, back in the early 1990s, one of the things that kind of led me on this journey of investigating, you know, how the world's controlled by the manipulation of public opinion, was the fact that I was being laughed at by so many people in the street, overwhelmingly not for what I was saying and standing for, but for what they'd been told I was standing for and saying. And that's when I started to think, hey up, you know, what else the hell are we taking on day after day as our reality that's an equal load of nonsense? And so that period is kind of drawn to a close, and people are now beginning to see that the view of me they've had is not the view of me that really exists.
So it was a difficult time for you?
Oh, it was I would have given serious money to change the shape of my face and run a tea shop in Ventnor at that time, I can't tell you, because, you know, when you're going through that complete reappraisal of your life
and ridicule as well.
Oh yeah, but I mean, you see, I'm a great believer that we attract to us what we need to evolve. And interestingly, during the 80s, the two things that I feared most, and fear is the controller. So, you know, if we fear things, then we are limited in whatever area that fear relates to. And the two things I was fearful of was, ironically, public speaking, which is a piece of cake to me now, and ridicule. And the two are related because most people, as I was at that time, are frightened of speaking in public because what they're doing, instead of looking to themselves for confirmation they're all right people, this is me, if you don't like it, we'll do the other thing because you have every right not to like it, but I have every right to be me. And therefore saying to an audience, this is me, take it or leave it, fine. What someone who is frightened of public speaking is actually saying is to the audience is, for God's sake, tell me I'm an all right person. You put that same person who's frightened of speaking to an audience among friends they're comfortable with in a front room, and they'll talk articulately all night. Put them in front of an audience, and the fear of what other people think of them will turn them to jelly. And so as a result of that experience I went through, which was colossal. I mean, it's hard to describe what it's like to walk down any street in Britain and be laughed at by most of the people in the street, and then to think, well, sod this, I'm going to get out of here. And you get in your car to get away from it. You stop at the lights, you look to your right, and you realise the people in the next car are laughing at you, and that's a really intense, extreme experience. But like all intense, extreme experiences, with the benefit of hindsight, you see what an enormous gift that was. And now, I mean, life's a gas compared with what it was before, because whether people agree with me or don't agree with me, that's their right. but I'm being me, and I'm not putting a mask to the world. And interestingly, my football career finished with rheumatoid arthritis, and it got very severe through the 80s, to the point where if I was getting on a train, I had to wait for another passenger to come along and open the door for me because my wrist was so painful. Once this process was underway of dropping the mask, the arthritis disappeared dramatically in that same period without any drugs and without any treatment, because I do feel that this the tremendous tensions in the psyche between that part of us that wants to say, this is me, this is what I think, and the part of us going, oh my God, you can't do that, put the dam up, look at the consequences for saying and doing what you really are. The tensions in the psyche, I think, are overwhelmingly behind most...
A lot of the ailments that people suffer from.
Mental, emotional, and therefore physical disease, yeah.
I knew this would happen. Lots of calls coming through on 0345 1053 89. Let's go to Valerie, who's been hanging on for some time. Valerie, you're on Talk Radio. Good morning.
Good morning. Real pleasure to talk to you, David.
Hello, Val.
Hello.
I can't quite hear. Is there a chance of turning these headphones off? Is that possible? This is technology, Val. You can't trust it, you know.
We'll get somebody through to do that, Valerie. But have you got a question?
Yes, certainly. It's a slightly different angle to the technology, but what really worries me, if technology takes over all our jobs, who's going to be able to afford the products that the companies are selling? Because there won't be any wages, will there?
Well, I think that the whole thing's got really silly now, because technology is being used in a very negative, controlling way, when it could be used, if it was used with good sense, it could be used for very positive reasons.
That's right.
But I think, you know, if you look at it, and this whole idea of control, unemployment is a major form of control.
Yes, right.
Because if you've got low unemployment, then you have a situation in which the mass of the people, if you like, are very much in the driving seat. Once you've got a situation of high unemployment, if you can maintain that, and as has been done in this country, persuade people overwhelmingly to accept high unemployment as a state of way of life, you then have a large number of people, an example, if you like, which you can point other people to are in work, saying, I tell you what, if you don't play the game effectively, that's where you end up, you know.
No, there is a flaw in that argument, in that no government would want to perpetuate high unemployment, particularly in the system that we live within, because it costs the country, costs all those who are in work an extra few bob every month, every week in taxes to sustain those who aren't working.
It depends.
So why would you perpetuate it?
It depends what your motivation is. If your motivation is the benefit of the country and the benefit of the people, then you make a valid point. If your desire is to control, then unemployment becomes a very key tool in that. Fear is the controlling mechanism of the human race. It's used in so many different ways. We have monsters created at different times. We must do this, we must do that, because we fear this new monster. There'll be another monster down the line eventually. Fear of unemployment, fear of this, fear of that, fear of being different because of ridicule and condemnation. Fear, 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 fear. And freedom is letting go of fear. And once you do that, you start to realize you can be yourself, and not only survive being yourself, but to prosper, you step out of this herd mentality. And the sheepdog of the herd mentality is fear in all its forms, and it's about time we let go of fear, because today's the first day of the rest of our eternity. There is nothing to fear, and we create the fear. This is it. So we're in control of letting it go. This is where you get a room of people, and they'll all fear something different, and all the other people won't fear what the other people fear. So we're creating individually fear within ourselves, so we can let it go within ourselves. And when we do, the means of control disappears.
0345 1053 89, that is the telephone number. After the latest news from Talk Radio UK at 8, we'll try and squeeze in as many calls as we possibly can, and an overwhelming number of people attempting to call that particular number at the moment. 0345 1053 89. It's Moz Dee here on Talk Radio UK in conversation with David Icke, talking about his theories on the planet, the world and humanity. And if you want to ask him a question directly, you feel quite free to do so. At the moment, with David Icke. known to, I should think, the majority of people across the United Kingdom and more people across the world. He's got a new offering out in paperback called "And the Truth Shall..." It's this cold, I told you. It's messing me up. "And the Truth Shall Set You Free." That's the name of the book. And the thing that gets me about it, David, is the detail that you go into regarding some of the conspiracy theories that you've touched upon so far.
Yeah.
This amount of detail must have required a great deal of research.
I've done virtually nothing else apart from going around and talking at public meetings and stuff like that. When I've not been doing that, I've been researching. Because what I wanted to do was, it's amazing how we take on different words and we link them together so that when you say one word, you say another. So this has happened with conspiracy. Conspiracy has been linked completely with theory. So someone says conspiracy, they say conspiracy theory. And I wanted to pull together research, not just my own research, but research from people all over the world of different races, different backgrounds, different countries, different continents, and fit the web together in a way which was so detailed that anyone finishing the book would say, well, whether it's all correct, and I don't claim every detail is correct, I'm trying to unmask here something that doesn't want to be unmasked, so not everything's going to be absolutely right in every detail, but it does turn conspiracy theory into provable fact that there is a secret agenda and a secret government of the world, and many of the organizations involved in the secret government can be named.
Now, you talked about part of this theory of yours is that a World Bank will evolve, and Nigel's in London. You've got a question about that, haven't you, Nigel?
Well, I haven't got a question about it. I actually run five companies, and with the greatest respect for Mr. Icke, it's impossible to ever foresee it happening.
Yeah.
Because you see, if it did happen, he talks about power. Power would shift to the World Bank. So it really shoots his argument in the foot.
Why is that?
Well, you just said that people are dominated, aren't they, because of money and credit cards and control. But then control would shift to a World Bank, wouldn't it?
That's right.
How would you administer a World Bank?
Well, the technology certainly is now allowing this to happen. And if we were talking, 5-10 years ago, maybe, say 10 years ago, you could well have come on, Nigel, to me and said, look, I run 5 companies. The idea of a European central bank and a European currency involving the whole of Western Europe and then encompassing the former Soviet Union is absolutely ridiculous. How would it be administered? Well, it's happening, and that is a stepping stone to global control. And the fact is that we have an unofficial World Bank now. Who controls the world financial system? Who actually controls it? Name who controls this system. We're now seeing the mega banks in the world fusing to create mega banks.
Because it's called competition.
No, it's not called competition. It's called power in fewer and fewer hands. We don't have competition in the world, Nigel. We don't have capitalism. We have cartelism, which manifests itself and projects itself as the free market.
I disagree. I'm sorry.
Well, you have every right to disagree, but we're all right to our opinion.
Well, that's right. Well, let me just give an example. When we grow up and when we're born, when we go to school, we're taught about competition. We get exams at school. We're taught to compete in sports, and that instills in people the sense of competition when they get older. Now, some people like to compete, some people don't like to compete, and in business it's all about competition. Some companies grow, some companies fail, some companies merge, and that's competition.
Is that the same competition that pervades through the Seven Sisters oil cartel, in which the major oil companies agree to set oil prices? They agree that oil prices will be put up by Muggins' turn in a round-robin fashion, then the others naturally follow because they say they have to compete. Is that the competition and free market we're talking about? Is it the free market that you can walk down high streets all over the world and see apparently different names above the shops, and in fact they're owned by massive holding companies that own goodness knows how much? The food chain in the world now is effectively controlled by 2 or 3 major multinational companies like Nestle and Lever Brothers and people like this.
Okay, well, let me just come back to your argument just now, okay, the oil companies, okay? So the oil companies have grown, and because they haven't had competition that has been good enough, they've been able to manipulate prices. That happens all the time in business.
So we have cartelism.
Yeah, but it's
which
still,
is what I've just said.
Yeah, but it's still businesses have grown and come together and able to, unfortunately, control prices. There's nothing wrong with that. That's business. And if other companies weren't able to compete with those oil companies and become bigger and grow faster, then they would have been able to do it themselves.
Well, what if the oil companies, as is provable when you look at history and you look at the research, what if oil companies and the governments of the countries those oil companies are based in, and the intelligence agencies of those countries, like the CIA and British intelligence, actually work as one? So when you've got a country that is not playing the game, say in the Middle East, to suit the oil company cartel, that regime is removed or undermined. Is that fair competition?
It's life, it's business, it's the way things happen.
Well, if that's life to you, Nigel, well, it ain't life to me, and that's the life I'm trying to change.
That's Nigel in London. I don't mean to be rude or cut you off, Nigel. You had some sound points to make, but an awful lot of people want to talk about this particular subject. Andre is in London. Andre, you're on Talk Radio. How are you?
Yeah, fine, thank you. You know, I would like you to talk a bit about the Trilateral Commission.
Be delighted.
And, you know, the fact that, quote-unquote, the U.S. are trying to reclaim their country from the UK domination. They control about 65% of the U.S. economy. Every time I say that, people laugh at me here, because they say that the United States are controlling the English economy.
Well, I'd love to...
You know, the Trilateral Commission, the fact, for instance, that Clinton was selected by the Trilateralists 12 years ago in Baden-Baden in a secret meeting. They hold their secret meeting every year.
Well, that was
know that?
Yeah, that was the Bilderberg group. But he is a member of the Trilateral Commission. Very quickly, if I could point this out for people who haven't come across this.
Yes.
There is...
For instance, the Seven Sisters, too, are controlled by the House of Orange.
Yeah. Well, can I just... Andre, just point out some of these organizations that are actually running the world. 99% of journalists will never have heard of, never mind the rest of us. But the information's there if you look for it. There is a group of organizations working as one network. Among them are something called the Trilateral Commission, which was set up in 72-73 by the Rockefeller Empire, although there's people above them for sure. And what that's role in this network is to coordinate the manipulation between 3 points in the world, hence Trilateral Commission: America, Western Europe, and Japan. Working in concert with this is something called the Bilderberg Group, started in 1954, current chairman Lord Carrington, and it pulls together the top businessmen, bankers, politicians, what have you, to coordinate a plan, a policy which links in with the Trilateral Commission, all the things I'm talking about, centralization of power. And there's also another one in America called the Council on Foreign Relations, which every single president, apart from Ronald Reagan, who wasn't actually president at the time, George Bush was, has been a member of since it was started in 1921. And then we have the Royal Institute of International Affairs here in London at Chatham House. Just to point out two things here about this group. It's amazing how many people in key positions are members of this network of organizations. The last four, and I can only say the last four because that's only as far as I've had time to go back. The last four Director Generals, Secretary Generals of NATO have been Bilderbergers. Joseph Luns, Manfred Wörner, Lord Carrington, who comes up everywhere, and Willie Claes, the man who's just been replaced. Now, the man who's being put forward now as the new Secretary General of NATO is Ruud Lubbers, the former Dutch Prime Minister, long-term Bilderberger. If you then look at the main peace negotiators throughout the Bosnian War, up comes the Trilateral Commission. The first European Union peace negotiator was Lord Carrington. When he failed, he was replaced by Lord Owen, Trilateral Commission. At the same time, they were working for the European Union in Bosnia. The UN peace negotiators were first Cyrus Vance, Council on Foreign Relations, Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, and he was replaced by Thorvald Stoltenberg of Norway, Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg Group. When they failed, amid worldwide publicity, came a so-called independent peace negotiator in Bosnia, Jimmy Carter, the first Trilateral Commission President of the United States. At the moment we have Richard Holbrooke, President Clinton's peace negotiator in Bosnia, Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg Group. Throughout the period of the Bosnian War, Warren Zimmerman has been the U.S. ambassador there, Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission. Warren Christopher, the U.S. Secretary of State during this period, who's overseen this, Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, and above him, President Clinton, Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations. Now,
I understand what you're saying here, and
but why don't we know this? Why don't we know these common themes?
I understand what you're saying, but it could be said, for instance, if you look at our own Houses of Parliament, you know, particularly on the government side of the House, a lot of people there went to the same school. These links can be found. And great men and large companies will always bind themselves together in clubs, as it were, will always have summits, always to discuss perhaps ways that they can link together and help the greater cause.
Yeah, but when you...
So it's easy to find links like this, isn't it?
No, it's not easy to find them, but they can be found. And in an open democratic society, he said, laughing, we ought to know these links, because as researchers come more and more into the public arena, as more and more people have started to research this all over the world, these organizations that I've just named have an agenda of world government, world central bank, world army, world currency, microchipped population. And it's amazing how many apparent opposites in politics, people that we look at in the public arena and we see as opposing each other, have different views, are all members of these organizations or attendees at the meetings, organizations that have a common agenda. And it's amazing also how your political star soars when you start getting invited to these meetings. In 1991, a relatively unknown governor for Arkansas called Bill Clinton was invited to the Bilderberg Group meeting in Baden-Baden, Germany. 18 months later, the guy's president of the United States. In 1993, a relatively unknown Labour Party Home Affairs spokesman called Tony Blair was invited to the Bilderberg Group meeting in Greece. A year later, he's leader of the Labour Party and quite possibly the next Prime Minister. And incidentally, the present Chancellor of the Exchequer, Kenneth Clarke, was also at that same meeting in Greece in 1993, something he has chosen not to reveal in the House of Commons register. And it's another interesting thing about the Bilderberg Group, something that's been very topical in the last few months. The Bilderberg Group, since 1954, has been trying to manipulate the centralization of control in Europe, right? In Bergenstock, Switzerland in June, that was the last Bilderberg Group meeting. One of the attendees was a guy called Norman Lamont. A few days after Norman Lamont attended a meeting, a secret private meeting of an organization with a provable desire for centralization of control in Europe, he was sitting next to John Redwood, opposing John Major in the election on the basis that he didn't want to see the centralization of control in Europe. So, Mr. Lamont, perhaps you'd let us know what's going on, because I can't work it out, or maybe I can.
Morning.
Good morning.
Hiya.
Hi, mate.
Hello, David. It's refreshing to hear somebody who knows what's going on. I agree with nearly everything you say, but I'd like to make 4 points, if I may, if we have the time. The mass conditioning thing, the trouble is, with the masses, most people do not have the time or the energy to combat it. They haven't got time to think.
Exactly as planned, of course.
Exactly as planned, of course, yes, of course. This has happened over a long period of time. They don't have time to think or do anything about it. They are so used to being knocked back when they try and do something and ignored, they lose the inclination to even try. You know, of course, those people with money and position, it doesn't affect them nearly as much because, well, for obvious reasons, they have time to think and plan and manipulate other people. But having said all that,
the alternative is not, of course, anarchy, is it? We have to have some degree of conditioning to function as a society, don't we? It is necessary.
Can I just make a point on that?
Yeah.
I think myself that the thing that's missing in the world is respect. Respect for our individual right to be ourselves and express ourselves and be us, and also respect at the same time, and equally important, for everyone else's right to be them, and so we don't impose what we believe and what we feel on everyone else. And this is what religions have been trying to do, and political isms have been trying to do. They've been trying to impose lock, stock and barrel, off-the-peg belief systems on everybody else. And going back to that mass schizophrenia I talked about earlier, the reason we are both the slaves of the system and the prison warders of the system, of the other slaves, is because of the lack of respect. Because we lack the respect for our own right to express who we are a slave to the system. But because we don't respect everyone else's right to be who they are, we are the prison warder of them. It's like having I think I said earlier, a group of people in a prison cell, and whenever anyone tries to escape and finds a way out, all the other prisoners run across to block the exits. So when we respect our own right to express our individuality and everyone else's right to do the same without us, creating a fearful situation so that they go back in the shell, then we'll have harmony without agreement. If everyone agrees on everything, it's not only boring, it's a very static state. We don't evolve, we don't learn from each other and get other people's opinions and views, but we can have disagreement with harmony if we respect each other. And I think what's lacking is respect, and when that comes, we won't have chaos and anarchy. I mean, people keep saying, well, if we didn't have this control, we'd have chaos and anarchy. But crikey, I keep turning on the news, Mo, and opening newspapers, and all I see is flipping chaos and anarchy.
Isn't it something to do with natural law as well? You've mentioned fear a lot in this discussion. You say that's something that controls us, but fear has been there and instilled in us for a very good reason, hasn't it? It suggests to us that actually it might be dangerous to do that. No, they shouldn't do this. And when we developed out the slime, we came out the cave. We developed these social systems for ourselves. It helped us survive, it helped us to thrive, and it helped us get to the top of the food chain.
There's a very big difference, I would suggest, between fear and awareness. I have an awareness that if I walk across Oxford Street outside here without looking, I'm going to be in a dangerous situation, so I don't do it. But I don't fear being knocked over. I don't fear being in a road accident. I don't fear falling off a cliff, because I'm aware not to get too close. It's not fear, it's awareness. And there's a big difference between those two emotions. Awareness is a streetwiseness, if you like. Fear, you've already given your power away, because fear sucks power and sucks confidence and sucks potential out of us. There's a very big difference between the two, I would suggest.
Mark, you're in Taunton and you're on Talk Radio UK. How are you?
Hi, Moz. All right, great.
Oh, yeah.
I want to disagree with that last point about fear. Fear is the only thing that keeps me working. Fear of not earning any money motivates me like you wouldn't believe. But
Well, I feel for you, Mark. If your life's full of fear, mate.
No, it's not full of fear, David. It's just that fear is a defining, motivating force. Maybe you would define it as something else. I always think to myself, it would worry me, it would frighten me to think that I might lose my house or my, my livelihood or something, and that motivates me to do a good job.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But anyway,
there are other emotions that bring that about, or can bring that about also, because not everyone's in that situation of fear, being motivated by fear. And of course, if you're motivated by fear of losing things...
When I say I'm motivated by fear, I'm not motivated that I get the screaming abdabs, the thought of it. What I mean to say is that, it's a worry then. Well, isn't a worry a fear? I don't know. Anyway, that wasn't really what I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to talk to you about this global conspiracy theory that you had, and this trilateral group. I only came in sort of halfway through the conversation, so maybe I've missed a significant part of it. But you were talking about politicians and prospective leaders of government and former and future presidents, probably, of the United States, all being a member of this global conspiracy to run the world. But your sort of argument, as far as I'm concerned, completely falls flat on its face.
Well, it doesn't, sir. There's got to be a reply to what you're going to say.
Hang on, you haven't heard what I'm going to say yet?
Yeah.
Just simply because of their sheer ineptitude at running their governments as it stands at the moment.
Exactly.
So what you're saying is that this is all pretend?
No, there is this myth in the world, which is perpetuated both by politicians and by the media, that politicians, presidents and prime ministers are the final arbiters of power in the world. The politicians walk the world stage, making speeches and attending summits and acting as if they're the final arbiters of power, and the media report the world as if that is the case. That allows the people who are above the politicians in the pyramid to go unchallenged and unexposed, because there is this unwritten kind of idea that they don't exist. But above the politicians, provably, are those that control the world money system, for a start. Prime ministers, presidents and governments are constantly, day after day after day, having their decisions of what they can and cannot do controlled by the ups and downs and what's happening in the world financial system.